Hi, my name is GEORGIO-ARMANI Jones, and this is Crash Course African American History. Today, we'll be diving into the topic of abolitionists and talking about one important and powerful woman, Mary Ann Shad Cary. Mary Ann Shad was born in Wilmington, Delaware on October 9, 1823, to two free African Americans, Abraham Doris Shad and Harriet Burton Parnell. Growing up, her family's home was frequently used as a refuge for fugitive slaves, and it gave her an inside look on how it was to be a slave in America. Gaining knowledge wasn't easy for Mary Ann Shad Cary. When she was a little girl, it became illegal for African American kids to be taught in the state of Delaware. So, her family decided to pack her and her family all up and take her to Pennsylvania where she can get a very good education. Once moved, Mary Ann Shad Cary attended a Quaker boarding school in West Chester, Pennsylvania until she was 16 years old. After leaving the boarding school, Mary Ann Shad Cary decided to start teaching and started teaching around all northeastern states in the United States, such as Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and New York City. After the Fugitive Slave Act law was announced in 1850, Mary Ann Shad Cary decided to take her teaching somewhere else. So, she decided to leave the United States and move to Canada, where she opened a racially integrated school for Black refugees in 1851. In 1853, Shad founded an anti-slavery newspaper called the Provincial Freeman. The paper's slogan was devoted to anti-slavery, temperance, and general literature. It was published weekly, and the first issue was published in Toronto, Ontario on March 24, 1853. It ran for 4 years before financial challenges ended its publication. Black newspapers often modeled their newspapers on white publications. According to research conducted by William David Sloan in his various textbooks, the first newspapers were about 4 pages long and had one blank page to provide a place for people to write their own information before passing along to friends, relatives, and others in their communities. He also discussed how the newspapers during these early days were the center of information for society and culture. In 1854, Shad decided to flip the script and change the masthead to her own name, rather than Ward or MacArthur. She also decided to get her sister to help her to edit the paper. There was intense criticism of the change, and Shad was forced to resign the following year. Between 1855 and 1856, Shad traveled throughout the United States as an anti-slavery speaker advocating for full racial integration in education and self-resilience. In her speeches, she advised all Blacks to fight for fair treatment and take legal action if necessary. Shad had also sought to participate in the 1855 Philadelphia Colored Convention, but women had never been permitted to attend, and the assembly had to debate whether to let her sit as a delegate. Her advocacy of immigration made her a controversial figure, and she was only permitted by a slim margin of 15 votes. According to Frederick Douglass's paper, although she gave a speech at the convention advocating for immigration, she was so well received that the delegates voted to give her more than 10 minutes to speak. However, her presence at the convention was largely elided from the minutes, likely because she was a woman. In 1856, Shad married a man named Thomas F. Cary, a Toronto barber who was also involved with the Provincial Freeman. They had a daughter named Sarah and a son named Linton. By 1856, Shad was a member of the Chatham Vigilance Committee that sought to prevent former slaves from being brought back to the United States to be brought back into slavery. After Shad's husband tragically died in 1860, she decided to move her and her kids back to the United States. During the American Civil War, Shad worked as a recruiting officer to enlist Black volunteers for the Union Army for the state of Indiana. After the Civil War, Shad decided that she wasn't done with teaching, so she decided to teach in Black schools in Wilmington. She then returned to Washington, D.C. with her daughter, where she decided to teach for 15 more years after that. Once she was done with teaching, she decided to enroll in Howard University School of Law and graduated at the age of 60 in 1883, becoming the second Black woman in the United States to receive a degree in law. Let's head to the thought bubble. Mary Ann Shad Cary. Being a fearless trailblazer, she broke barriers at every turn, fighting for the abolition of slavery, advocating for women's rights, and using education as a weapon of change. As the first Black woman to publish a newspaper in North America, she challenged both racial and gender norms. Her voice rang out, not only in print, but through activism, calling for unity among Black communities and insisting on the right to self-determination. She was a true pioneer of justice, defying an era that tried to silence her, yet she stood firm, relentless in her quest for freedom and equality. Thanks, Thought Bubble. Mary Ann Shad Cary did so much for the Black community. She was a pioneering African American journalist, educator, and activist. As an outspoken advocate for racial equality, she worked tirelessly to support the Underground Railroad and fought for the rights of Black people and women in both the U.S. and Canada. She was so appreciated by the Black community, and we could not thank her more enough. She sadly passed away in 1893, leaving behind a legacy of courage, leadership, and advocacy for justice. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.